The first shot came out of nowhere, whistling past Ethan Morgan's ear before he had time to react. The second tore through his coat sleeve as he dove behind a boulder, his Winchester already in hand. Three men on horseback, silhouettes against the setting Montana sun, had materialized from the pine forest flanking the narrow mountain trail. Ethan's finger found the trigger as naturally as breathing. The Winchester's report echoed through the canyon, and the leftmost rider tumbled from his saddle. The others scattered, seeking cover among the rocks. For 20 heartbeats, silence descended. Then gunfire erupted again, bullets chipping stone inches from Ethan's face. "You picked the wrong man to rob," Ethan muttered, chambering another round. He waited for the flash of a muzzle, then fired twice in rapid succession. A scream confirmed his aim. The third assailant broke cover, attempting to flee. Ethan's final shot caught the horse, sending both beast and rider crashing to the ground. The man struggled to his feet, clutching a bleeding arm. "Don't," Ethan warned, advancing with his Colt Peacemaker drawn. "You've already lost 2 men today." The wounded outlaw froze, hatred burning in his eyes. "This ain't over, mister. You don't know who you're dealing with." "I know exactly what you are," Ethan replied, studying the man's face in the fading light. He'd seen that look before, on battlefields across the South, in the eyes of men with nothing left to lose. "Turn around." The man complied, and Ethan bound his wrists with leather thongs. Only then did he examine the first fallen outlaw, finding a wanted poster in his saddlebag. $500 for armed robbery and murder. Blood money that would keep Ethan in supplies through winter. "Your friend here's worth something to the law," Ethan told his captive. "Let's see if you are too." Ethan Morgan hadn't always lived alone in the Montana wilderness. 8 years earlier, he'd had a name people respected in Virginia, a wife who laughed at his jokes, and a son who thought his father hung the moon. Then came the bank robbery, the funeral, and the manhunt that left 3 men dead by Ethan's hand. 2 had escaped, fled west, they said. Among them, a man named James Larson, whose face Ethan had glimpsed during the robbery, a face etched into his memory alongside the names from witness accounts, Larson and Bridges. So Ethan followed, tracking them through frontier towns until the trail went cold in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains. He'd built his cabin on a ridge overlooking Ghost Canyon, a fortress disguised as a homestead. Strategic sight lines in every direction, hidden rifle ports beneath the eaves, a root cellar that doubled as an escape tunnel. 8 years of vigilance had transformed wartime survival skills into second nature. The telegram from his sister arrived on a Tuesday. Sarah's handwriting, familiar and unwelcome. "Have arranged bride for you. Stop Rebecca Stone. Arrives Friday. Stage. Stop. No arguments. Stop. She needs fresh start. You need companion. Stop." Ethan crumpled the paper in his fist. Sarah had always believed she knew what was best for him, even when they were children. Some things never changed. The stagecoach arrived precisely at 4, trailing dust through Copper Springs Main Street. Ethan watched from the shadow of the general store porch as passengers disembarked. A family with small children, a drummer with sample cases, an elderly couple. Last to emerge was a woman in her late 20s, dressed in a practical blue traveling suit. She carried only a single valise and surveyed the street with a calculated assessment of someone cataloging threats and exits. Rebecca Stone spotted him immediately, though Ethan had never described himself to Sarah. Something in his posture, perhaps, or the way he stood apart from the townspeople. She approached without hesitation. "Mr. Morgan." Not a question. "Miss Stone." "Mrs. Stone," she corrected. "Widowed." Up close, Ethan noted details a less observant man might miss. The slight bulge beneath her jacket, a concealed derringer, the calluses on her right hand. Someone familiar with firearms. Eyes that missed nothing, including his own assessment. I see Sarah didn't inform you of my arrival, Rebecca continued, unfazed by his silence. She informed me. I just didn't agree. And yet here you are. Ethan lifted her valise. It's a long ride to the cabin. We should start if we want to arrive before dark. During the journey up mountain trails, Rebecca remained silent, studying the terrain with the intensity of someone memorizing an escape route. Only when they crossed a particular ridge did she speak again. Defensible position, she observed, nodding toward Ethan's cabin perched above Ghost Canyon. Good sight lines. Difficult approach. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You know something about defensive positions, Mrs. Stone? I know something about needing them, Mr. Morgan. Later that evening, after showing her the cabin's sparse accommodations, Ethan caught her examining his gun rack. Her fingers traced the walnut stock of a Henry rifle with the familiarity of an old acquaintance. You won't find many society ladies in these mountains, Ethan said. Rebecca turned, unashamed at being discovered. I'm not looking for society. I'm looking for safety. From what? That's my concern. She opened her valise and removed the derringer he'd already spotted. I don't ask about your ghost, Mr. Morgan. Don't ask about mine. Something in her tone, defiance masking desperation, reminded Ethan of himself years ago. A wounded animal seeking high ground. There are rules here, he said finally. You pull your weight. You learn to use those weapons properly, not just carry them for show. And you understand that I didn't ask for a wife. I didn't ask for a husband, Rebecca countered. I needed shelter. You needed a housekeeper. Consider this an arrangement of convenience, nothing more. Ethan nodded once. We understand each other. Dawn broke cold and clear the next morning. Ethan found Rebecca already awake, coffee brewing on the cast-iron stove. She'd rearranged his kitchen during the night, implements hung in more logical order, supplies stacked by frequency of use. I need to check my trap lines, Ethan announced after breakfast. I'll be gone until afternoon. Rebecca didn't look up from the inventory list she was writing. I saw your garden needs attention. I'll handle that. When Ethan returned hours later, he discovered Rebecca had done more than 10 vegetables. She'd reinforced the cabin's rear window shutters and organized his medical supplies. The garden had been not just weeded, but expanded, with stones marking new planting beds. More concerning, she'd been through his lockbox. The papers inside, maps, wanted posters, old military documents, had been examined and replaced almost perfectly. Almost. Ethan's Colt appeared in his hand before conscious thought. You went through my things. Rebecca turned from the stove, unflinching despite the weapon pointed at her midsection. I needed to know who I'm living with. And what did you learn? Former Union sharpshooter, husband, father, widower, manhunter. She stirred something that smelled better than anything Ethan had cooked in years. A man with enemies. That box was locked. Locks are only deterrents, Mr. Morgan. A determined person always finds a way in. The stalemate stretched between them until shouting from outside drew their attention. Jacob Wilson, Ethan's nearest neighbor 3 miles downhill, was riding hard toward the cabin, his young son clutched before him on the saddle, blood soaking both their shirts. Morgan, Wilson shouted, they shot my boy, Reed's men. Ethan holstered his weapon and moved to help, but Rebecca was already out the door. She took the child from his father's arms with practiced efficiency. Gunshot wound, left shoulder, she assessed, carrying the boy inside. Entry wound clean, no exit, bullets still in there. How long ago? 20 minutes, Wilson gasped. Ambushed us on our land. Said they were looking for someone. When I told them to leave, they shot Tommy and said next time they'd finish the job. Rebecca was already clearing the table, laying out instruments from Ethan's medical kit with the confidence of experience. I need hot water, whiskey, your sharpest knife, and needle and thread. You know what you're doing? Ethan asked. My mother was an army surgeon's assistant. I've removed bullets before. Her eyes met his, brooking no argument. Either help me or get out of my way. For the next hour, Ethan witnessed a side of Rebecca Stone he hadn't anticipated. She worked with ruthless precision, extracting the bullet from Tommy's shoulder while instructing Ethan and Jacob in how to assist. The boy survived thanks to her steady hands and knowledge. "Who is Reed?" she asked later, after Jacob had taken his sedated son to rest in Ethan's bed. "Matthew Reed, leader of a gang that's been terrorizing the territory for months," Ethan replied, studying her face. "Robbery, extortion, murder. Why?" Something flickered in Rebecca's eyes. Recognition, then fear, quickly masked. "Just curious what we're facing." "We aren't facing anything. I'm taking Wilson and his boy to town tomorrow for protection. You'll stay here." "No." Rebecca's voice hardened. "Those men are looking for someone. If they come back while you're gone, I need to be ready." She withdrew a folded paper from her pocket, a map of the surrounding territory with escape routes marked in precise detail. "You've been planning to run since you arrived," Ethan realized. "I've been planning to survive," she corrected. "There's a difference." When Jacob and Tommy were safely settled in town the next day, the sheriff pulled Ethan aside. "Morgan, these aren't ordinary outlaws. Reed's gang hit the bank in Helena last month. Killed 3 people, including a federal marshal. Word is they're looking for a woman in some kind of ledger. You seen anything unusual up your way?" Ethan thought of Rebecca, her hidden derringer and precise medical skills, her fear at hearing Reed's name. "Nothing unusual, Sheriff." That night, Ethan confronted Rebecca with what he'd learned. For a moment, she looked ready to deny everything. Then her shoulders sagged. "William Reed was my husband," she admitted. "Matthew is his younger brother." The pieces clicked into place. The widow part was true then. "Yes, but not how you think. William wasn't killed by disease or accident. He was shot by the husband of his mistress." Rebecca's laugh held no humor. "The great irony is that I was already planning to leave him. William gambled away our fortune, then started laundering money for his brother's gang through the family bank." She produced a small leather-bound book from a hidden pocket in her skirt. "This ledger contains proof of every transaction, names, dates, amounts, enough to hang Matthew Reed and send his father to prison. And you ran with it." "I ran for my life. Matthew believes I killed William. He won't stop until I'm dead, and this ledger is destroyed." She met Ethan's gaze without flinching. "Now you understand why I needed somewhere remote, why I needed a man with your particular skills." "You used me," Ethan said, anger rising. "Used my sister to set this up." "Yes." No apology, just stark truth. "What would you have done in my position?" The question hung between them as Ethan recalled his own desperate flight years earlier, the lengths he'd gone to hunting the men who destroyed his family. "We start training tomorrow," he said finally. "If Reed's men come, you need to know how to use every weapon in this house." For 2 weeks they prepared. Ethan taught Rebecca to handle the Winchester, to reload the Colt under pressure, to set traps along the approaches to the cabin. She absorbed every lesson with grim determination, often practicing until her hands bled. In turn, she showed unexpected knowledge of tactical planning, suggesting improvements to Ethan's defenses. Between lessons, they established a wary alliance built on mutual respect and shared danger. "Why did you really come to Montana?" Rebecca asked one evening as they cleaned weapons by lamplight. "Your sister mentioned a tragedy, but nothing specific." Ethan's hands stilled on the rifle barrel. He rarely spoke of his past, but Rebecca had earned the truth. "Bank robbery in Richmond, 1868. My wife and son were inside, making a deposit from our store. 5 men, faces covered. When the teller resisted, they opened fire." His voice remained steady, emotions long since cauterized. "I tracked 3 of them to Tennessee. The other 2 were rumored to have fled west. James Larson and a man named Bridges. So you followed. For a time, the trail went cold in Colorado. I kept moving, figuring they'd eventually surface. Ethan reassembled the rifle with practiced movements. 8 years now. Sometimes I wonder if they're even still alive. Rebecca studied him in the lamplight. Yet you stay vigilant, armed, ready. Some habits you don't break. Some ghosts you don't escape, she added quietly. The attack came at dawn 2 days later. Ethan was checking perimeter traps when rifle fire erupted from the tree line. 6 riders moving with military precision to surround the cabin. Rebecca was already at her designated position when Ethan made it back to the porch, the Henry rifle barking in disciplined 3-second intervals, just as he taught her. 2 attackers were down before they realized she wasn't alone in defending the homestead. "Reed!" Ethan shouted between shots. "No!" Rebecca called back. "He sends lieutenants first. Test defenses." They repelled the attack, but both recognized it as merely the first wave. That night, as they reinforced barricades, Rebecca made a decision. "I should leave. Draw them away from here." "And go where?" Ethan demanded. "How long before they run you down? This isn't your fight. It became my fight when they attacked my home." Ethan checked the loading on his Colt. Besides, Reed's gang has connections to bank robberies across 3 territories, including Richmond, 1868. Rebecca's eyes widened. "You think?" "I think Matthew Reed might know something about the men I've been hunting, and I aim to ask him personally." The plan for their counterattack took shape over 3 days. Rebecca's knowledge of Reed's tactics combined with Ethan's military experience created a strategy both bold and precise. Jacob Wilson spread word to trusted neighbors, building a small force of hardened frontiersmen with personal reasons to see Reed's reign of terror end. "He'll expect us to hunker down, wait for his next move," Ethan explained, sketching a rough map of Copper Springs. "Instead, we bring the fight to him." Intelligence from town revealed Reed had established headquarters in the abandoned church at the edge of Copper Springs. A defensive position with clear sightlines, exactly where Ethan would have chosen himself. "He's got 12 men, hostages, and the high ground," Rebecca observed. "Frontal assault would be suicide. That's why we're not going in the front." The second attack came not at the cabin, but in town. Reed himself led his 12 men into Copper Springs at midday, taking hostages and demanding the surrender of Rebecca Stone. "They're using the church as their stronghold," Jacob Wilson reported after writing to warn Ethan. "Got the pastor's family inside. Reed says he'll kill 1 hostage every hour until you turn her over." By sundown, Ethan had assembled his makeshift militia, 8 men who valued their independence enough to fight for it. Rebecca insisted on joining, despite Ethan's objections. "I'm the best shot among them," she pointed out, "and I know Reed's tactics." Their plan was simple but effective. 3 men created a diversion at the saloon, while Ethan, Rebecca, and the others infiltrated the church through the cemetery behind it. The first part worked perfectly. Half of Reed's men rushed to defend against the feint. Inside the church, Ethan moved like the military man he'd once been, hand signals directing their advance through the shadows. Rebecca matched him step for step, her Derringer now supplemented by a Remington revolver. The battle erupted in the church vestry, close quarters, deafening gunfire, powder smoke turning the air into a suffocating fog. Ethan lost count of his shots, focused only on advancing, on protecting the hostages huddled in the corner. A bullet grazed his temple, momentarily blinding him with blood. Through the haze, he saw Rebecca standing over him, firing methodically at advancing figures. Then pain exploded in his shoulder as another shot found its mark. Matthew Reed emerged from the smoke, a tall man with cold eyes and his gun trained on Ethan's heart. "So this is the famous Morgan," Reed sneered. "The ghost of Ghost Canyon. Not so dangerous after all." Dangerous enough, Ethan replied, his own weapon empty, but his gaze steady. Where's my sister-in-law? Reed demanded. Where's the woman who murdered my brother? I didn't murder William. Rebecca's voice came from behind a pillar. Edward Caldwell did. After finding your brother in bed with his wife. You know that's the truth. Reed's face contorted. You turned him against his family, led him to ruin. William ruined himself, Rebecca replied, and your father used him to launder money for your gang. It's all in the ledger. Every transaction, every murder paid for with Reed banking money. A ledger no one will ever see, Reed snarled, his finger tightening on the trigger. As Reed's attention focused on Ethan, movement behind the outlaw leader caught Ethan's eye. Reed's second-in-command stepped into view, a lean man with a jagged scar across his chin. Even through blood and gun smoke, Ethan recognized the face that had haunted his dreams for 8 years. Larson, Ethan whispered, the name tearing from his throat. The outlaw's head snapped up, recognition dawning in his eyes. The same eyes Ethan had seen watching dispassionately as his wife and child fell under a hail of bullets. For one suspended moment, the church, the gunfight, Reed, everything vanished as Hunter and Hunted finally stood face to face. 3 shots rang out in rapid succession. Reed staggered, looking down in disbelief at the spreading crimson stain across his chest. Behind him stood the sheriff, smoking gun in hand. That's for my deputy and Helena, the lawman said grimly, and all the others. As Reed fell, Larson broke from his momentary shock, raising his pistol toward Ethan. Before he could fire, Rebecca's Remington barked once. The bullet caught Larson square in the chest, ending the life of one of the last men responsible for destroying Ethan's family. Save your breath, she told Ethan as he struggled to speak through the shock and pain of his wounds. You'll need it to call my name when you need help getting back to the cabin. Recovery came slowly. Ethan's wounds healed under Rebecca's careful attention, while the territory marshal dismantled what remained of Reed's gang. The ledger Rebecca had preserved provided evidence that sent Reed's father and 3 bank officials to prison. Winter settled over Ghost Canyon, sealing the high mountain trails in snow and ice. In the evenings, Ethan and Rebecca sat before the fire, no longer separated by suspicion, but joined by shared survival. What will you do now? Ethan asked one night. You're free to go anywhere. Rebecca considered the question. Freedom feels strange after running for so long. She studied the flames. What about you? Your hunt is almost over. 4 of the 5 men who killed your family are dead. 1 remains, Ethan corrected. Bridges escaped in the church fight. A deputy saw him fleeing south. Then we'll find him, Rebecca said simply. Together. It wasn't a declaration of love. Neither of them was built for sentimentality. It was something more practical, more enduring, a partnership forged in gunfire and mutual respect. When spring thawed the mountain passes, Rebecca expanded the garden while Ethan built an addition to the cabin, a proper surgery where she could treat neighbors' ailments. Word spread of the skilled healer at Morgan's place and of the former sharpshooter who now served as deputy sheriff when needed. A year to the day after the church battle, they hosted a dinner for those who'd fought alongside them. Jacob Wilson brought his now recovered son. The sheriff contributed a bottle of Kentucky bourbon. As twilight settled over the gathering, Rebecca presented Ethan with a gift, a new Colt revolver, its grip inlaid with silver, words engraved along the barrel. For the man who knows when to fight and when to keep silent. As their guest departed, a rider appeared on the trail, a federal marshal with a telegram. Thomas Bridges had been spotted leading a new gang eastward from California. The government was assembling a special posse of experienced manhunters. Ethan looked to Rebecca, who was already retrieving her Remington from its place above the mantel. Ready for another hunt, partner? He asked. Rebecca checked the revolver's chambers with practiced precision. Stop talking and prepare your weapons, Morgan. We have justice to deliver. Numero santum.